the death that's changed.
Yeah.
It's all gonna be skewed. It's gonna be different.
Yeah, there's the firefighter line of duty deaths are way up because of all the, where they've been able to prove that they got COVID on duty. So the numbers are way high this year. So typically you'll see like 100, 150 firefighter deaths a year across the country. Yeah, it's gonna be quite a bit bigger.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a work session. There'll be no voting and no decision making at it. This is a work session that we've all talked about in the past about our priorities and what direction we're going. So normally with these kind of meetings, we try to come up with a timeline, frame line, so that we're not here for 5 hours and not accomplishing anything. So normally, typically a meeting like this goes for 2 to 2.5 hours. So do I have a consensus of how long do you want this meeting to go? Typically, we'll set some priorities, or we'll not so much set priorities, but we'll discuss, and we won't have the data to prove what we're thinking, right? And so it gives the chief a framework to go forward and to start researching with his staff on the things that come out of this meeting. So how long do you think?
Couple hours. I gotta be out of here by 11:15 at the latest. So.
Okay, so why don't we make 11:45 and I'll set my alarm clock for 10:30. That way it might not even go that long, but if so, we'll just kind of wrap it up at 10:45 if everybody's good with it. Is there a consensus?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, whatever it takes.
Okay, perfect. So for our work plans, there's the chief split it in a couple different areas there. And first is operations, chief.
Yeah, so each year typically I'll ask our ask chief officers for their work plans for their incoming calendar year. And typically I'd have them actually come in here and present their work plan to you, but this is new to them. And we're still in our infancy as a fire district. So I did get their information, and it was a little bit of a struggle for some of them because this is new, but most of the stuff they have in here is just basic. Here we are in our first year trying to move forward and trying to get things organized. I was going to read these off to you just because these guys put the effort into getting it to me. So most of it's pretty much operational, but for training, we're looking at a Firefighter 2 Academy, which we were going to do a little earlier, but was moved to next month, February. We've got another Firefighter 1 Academy for the volunteers coming up here in the spring. We're taking applications right now. Develop and implement career and volunteer training schedule for the remainder of the year. We're review and revise the company performance standards. When I first came in, I brought a whole boatload of company performance standards, those are the skills evaluations that we would use as we train, and those just need to be gone through to make sure they all fit Estacada. We want to implement class and instructor evaluation for each training session, make sure our instructors are doing a good job. We need to offer the hazardous materials operations, which we're almost done. We're having, matter of fact, I think they're finishing one class today, and each academy that comes in will get that. It's an OSHA requirement we're supposed to do. We're trying to certify all our members as they complete their training, complete their skills. We're going to do a live fire instructor course the spring of this year. We're doing instructor 1 and 2, which is ongoing. Officer 2 just finished. We'll repeat it in 2 years. And then we have a list of wildland fire training that we're going to try to get through. So we have all our wildland firefighters and engine bosses qualified, which is everything from engine boss and crew boss to heavy equipment boss and firing operations. There's a list of 6 or 7 different classes there that we'll be putting together. For apparatus operator training, we'll be doing a full emergency driver and pumper operator course. Also this winter and the spring, we'll be doing driver and pumper qualification task books and sign-off programs for previous volunteers and people that had the certification just need to re-up. And then we'll be doing cone course and driver course for our tenders, our wildland apparatus, staff vehicles, everything to make sure that we're OSHA compliant and that people are safely driving and operating. In fact, over the course of my career, that's been an issue where people tend to hit things because they're not used to driving something that's a little bigger, a little longer. And part of the mitigation for that is doing an annual cone course and making sure they know what they're doing.
And we got skinny doors.
Yes, very skinny doors. It is. It's amazingly tight coming into those doors. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing it. So I'm pretty happy we haven't hit a mirror yet.
We've taken ladders off in the past,
Oh, yeah.
turned it too quick.
There's chips out of the concrete.
Yeah, it's gonna happen again, but trying to avoid it.
It'll happen.
For EMS, we're trying to increase the quality of EMS education training, doing that on the last Tuesday of the month and the fourth week of the month for our career staff. So that's everything from emergency medical responder up through paramedic. Provide specialty rescue training at the awareness level for all members. That'll be coming up. The EMR class is scheduled here for next month. That's emergency medical responders. So we have all our people medically trained. We're going to start offering CPR training twice a year, every year. That way we make sure we meet our CPR requirements. Fire officer training is an ongoing currently for the current officers. So every month we have an officer meeting. We'll do an hour of training before or after we do our officer meeting. And then we'll do task books and sign off programs specific to Estacada for our officers. And administrative wise, schedule and plan an awards banquet, which is currently scheduled for April 30th. So you guys will see something on that here pretty soon. For our operations, emergency
Chief,
operations.
I wonder,
Yes,
just for a second, if we could talk a little bit about training. So,
absolutely.
from a global standpoint from the board, I think that one of the things that came out of the wildland fire that happened this last year is having a department that's totally capable of handling our local needs. And so I think from a priority standpoint, at least from the board level, and it's for you to carry forward and decide how to accomplish it. But I think getting as many of our members trained in firefight, wildland firefighters.
Yeah, so for me coming in as the new guy and looking at what happened here in the history, because the Riverside fire is not the only big fire that's affected this place. So there's a history here, and so it's on it's my to-do list, if nothing else, to increase our ability to handle those types of things, keep it small if we can, become better prepared for training, for equipment, on and on and on. And we're on a good path to that. I'll talk a little bit about equipment because it relates to the grants and how that plays into it, but we're on a fast track for that as much as I can. It's a lot of training to bring down the pipe real fast. Certifications will take longer, but this training stuff has been the better part of my career. So the poor training guys, they have to have a little bit higher standard there, but yeah, we're definitely moving that direction. So the support from the board is great.
Yeah, totally. And then also, where are we at for our volunteers? I mean, how many volunteers do we have now? Just that estimate.
We're sticking at right now about anywhere between 28 and 30.
Is that including the 10 that we're bringing?
No.
So we have an additional 10 that we basically did a lateral volunteer recruitment, looking for people that have previous experience. And we have another 10 in the queue that we're processing right now.
So we could, by all means, by the end of the year, we could be up to 40 volunteers.
Probably better than that.
Yeah, probably better than that. And you got to remember too, you're talking combat versus,
Support.
support
Fire
and all that. So we're looking at, if you look at everything that we have for volunteers, we're sitting probably about 40 to 50.
And then combat ones, we're
sitting about 28 to 30 right now.
so potentially we could be up to 40 by the end of the year. That's very good.
We'll be there.
We've
And
got
then
a very active and hard recruitment going on. And it seems like the way our recruitment is set up and going from day one to now, the word gets out and we've got a lot of people are interested. The applications, we've had them out. Cheryl, how long has the application been out?
2 days and I've already had 2 applications.
Yeah, so and as soon as the word gets out, the more starts coming. And we go out, we put signs out.
I saw it on the highway.
Yeah, and so it opens up real quick, and there's a lot of people that are interested in coming. We've had a couple that are from other departments that want to switch and come here. So the word's getting out about us and
Okay.
how we're doing business.
Yeah,
So
there's
it is really,
still a lot of enthusiasm. It really hasn't waned, which is great.
Yes, yes.
Kind of on a side note, speaking, you brought up the signs. I come home last night, Springwater and Hayden Road. That sign's totally down.
okay. I'll check on it. I'll get it. Check on it today and get it.
Okay.
Yeah, we had.
I was gonna send you a text message. I got home, was tired.
I
So-
probably should, but that's a good idea. I could go out and check those because the way the wind was blowing
Yeah.
yesterday, we had a lot of stuff.
That's the only one I noticed down there. I mean, it looks like it might be destroyed.
So I got a question. So you've mentioned other fires, Riverside Fire, or not Riverside Fire, but the Pit 36.
Pit 36 is
Okay,
one.
so maybe somebody can verify what I heard a long time ago was that we could have went up there and put that out, but the feds wouldn't let us.
And
I've
that
heard different
happens a
stories.
lot.
So I'd be curious how we want to approach those situations in the future.
I think for the future, I have a relationship with the local Forest Service forest officer. I know him prior to coming here and before he was here. So I'm also have a pretty good relationship with the ODF guy that just recently came over here. So we've already met a couple of times here. And it's one of those, it's like, yeah, fires go, you know, there's no, I don't think that's going to exist.
I think that's the attitude we should have.
Right. Yeah, they have the same attitude about, yeah, we'll come here and go, you know, there's not a boundary issue there. I mean, obviously, if they're committed or have to be somewhere, that's one thing, but I don't think you're going to see that problem exist, at least.
And the fact that we're going to proactively be focusing on making sure our people are wildland trained, that we are able to and trained to be able to go into somebody else's fire district.
Like when this summer, when the bullfire was flaring up, you know, we were watching it, and it's like, if it gets to a certain point, there's triggers there. If it gets to a certain point, we're going to engage it. We're going to do what we can do from, you know, from our standpoint, which is quite a bit. And, you know, you're looking at, you know, okay, how many miles before it gets to here, you know, how far from the district, things like that. We're going out of the district to do that, but we can do that. There's no law or rule saying we can't go outside.
So to reiterate what you said, what my understanding was, not only Pit 36, but the Belfast fire up on Belfast, shortly after I moved in up there, Estacada was there. They had it controlled. It was not getting out, but it was not growing. Then ODF showed up, kicked them off, and then they were waiting for water tenders to come from Tillamook, and then it blew up, and the next thing, helicopters. That's what I heard about the Pit 36, that we went to the Pit 36. And that was the same thing. We were kicked off.
Right.
So
I remember patrolling that part of the district with water tenders and rigs, just patrolling because we couldn't go any further. And as far as I'm concerned, us going into somebody else's fire district is protecting our fire district.
Right.
Along with it, to keep it from coming our direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors about what did and didn't transpire. I've heard different things even yet from that about how it came to be on these ones in the past, but
So from a twofold thing, I think we're really attacking this from two different fronts. One, we're getting our members wildland firefighter trained. And two, we've got the chief developing relationships with these partners to ensure that we're able to mitigate things right at the initial startup. And so I think that that's very accountable to the public, our constituents. So
So the wildland fire training we did last summer.
Mhm.
Where does that fall in the wildland training? I mean, that was just part of it?
that is your bare bones,
S-190.
basic wildland firefighter.
Okay.
That gets you that's your base knowledge.
So those guys that actually achieved that, we could actually send them out for wildlands?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. To go on any wildland incident, you need to be 130, 190.
yeah,
But then there's different levels from there, right? So
Yeah.
you have your basic, and then they have what they call advanced wildland firefighter. It's basically a class or two in the task book.
so
So
that,
it's
is
just-
that where you're allowed to burn if you're advanced or what?
No, if you actually have somebody who's qualified, anybody trained can burn under that person.
Okay.
So we're having a lot of discussion on the overhead team that I'm part of about burning and how we've been doing it, but it's been kind of like, you know, don't do it, but don't. You know,
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
burn, we want you to burn, but don't do it and don't tell us. you know?
Yeah.
And we're trying to fix that so that it's a better system. And so I'm part of, when you speak, you know, then you probably become part of the committee, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're visiting that again for burning operations, but that's something we're going to want to bring here and get our people trained on. They don't necessarily need to be up at that burn boss qualification, but just the basic, this is how we do it.
Well, then I really feel the culture of going after these fires is evolving and changing too.
It has
It's
evolved
much more-
tremendously.
Much
Well,
more aggressive in the
from-
early days.
In the
Our
short time
wildfires.
I've been with
Yeah.
the overhead team, the relationships that we have from the state team to like ODF to the national overhead teams has changed tremendously to where it's a pretty easy mesh now. I mean, we show up and it's like, hey, how's it going? You know, we haven't seen you for a while, and we go out there and we're trading resources on site, and you know, hey, I could use a tender, well, I could use a hand crew, you know, and that sort of stuff exists. But those guys, you know, are like me, they're kind of the heads of their home districts, and so it all carries through, and it's part of that relationship building, and it makes all the difference. So
Chief, have you thought about, like, one of the things is we're accepting a bunch of equipment under that state grant to also make it deployable for a bigger regional, maybe down south fire or something to that point?
So part of the grant, the WUI grant in particular, the big one, that's part of the agreement, is that we would support those things. We're not, it's not a, well, you have to, you know, because if we got things going on at home, obviously, but that we would support the conflagrations, we would support the move ups, all that kind of stuff. So we're in that mix, and I'm actually, there's some things that have changed with that are probably going to put us more on the front line to be able to do
So
that.
one of the things I'm curious, have you thought about, like, making like a minimum amount of people and equipment that we have to keep here? Because I know I've been deployed to some of these things, and it happens pretty quick. And so one of the concerns I would think for us would be that we suddenly don't have a fire erupting down in Eugene, and 3/4 of our departments down in Eugene, and then suddenly we have something that happens.
Yeah, I won't do that to you.
It's worth mentioning.
No,
because
I've seen it happen, and you still have to protect what's at home. Obviously, the big one comes out, everybody wants to go, right? But
Right.
like on our career side, career firefighters are a little more ambitious for it. I'm like, well, I can probably send 2 of you at most. That's pretty much where I'm gonna max out. I've got to have enough people here to run the shifts. I've got to have the ALS coverage on and on. I can send more volunteers, obviously. So if I get more of our volunteers trained up, I can send more equipment because I have a bigger pool to draw from. But at this point, really, I only have career staff that are trained as an engine boss or above, and you have to have an engine boss to send one of those rigs out. So, so I'm pretty limited, you know, and then you got to have a driver and operator. So we're getting there with our volunteers, and I don't know if we'll be there this summer. We'll be better this summer than the last, but as we go, it's just going to grow. It's a program that'll evolve as we move on.
So you'll always be keeping equipment and workforce available locally.
Right, and part of the idea with wanting that Type 6 engine is that we now would have 2, so that I still have one here. So I can send one out, but one has to, I'm not going to send them both out.
Yeah.
The Type 3 would be different, obviously, but that's kind of the point. You know, it's an interface engine for that type of thing. So yeah, I won't ever short you where you don't have the resources available.
I
at
think
home.
Clackamas got caught with their pants down because their highly trained crew when the Riverside fire came, their highly trained crew was down in California on a complication, which, you know.
Has there been any discussion on, well, at least after the Riverside fire, from what I was hearing from community members was, you know, hey, could we have a wildland firefighting volunteer group where there's that minimal training? And a lot of people have been saying that.
That's the direction we're heading, and I believe I think Chief Smith has it mentioned in his work plan for something to pursue this year.
So it'd be like kind of like a subgroup of.
So they
Yeah,
don't have to
so-
be here every Wednesday doing drill. They get trained up and they know the basics and the survival skills, and they're able to be deployed on hand lines.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about that, and it's just another subgroup. So you have your combat firefighters that do everything, and it's just like you have a support firefighters just come and help in the office, kind of the same idea, but they're just doing wildland side. You have a tender group, they just run the tenders, so their training is different, but yeah, we're
absolutely.
going that direction.
So I was-
Obviously, we're trying to take a lot at once. So, you know,
I know that you fought that fire.
right.
I also did. I took that
6 months
class
old.
from Jeff Liggett,
Pretty much.
and it was pretty eye-opening. You know, because all of a sudden I just showed up with my truck and did what I thought was best. But the stuff that I actually learned, you're like, oh, wow, that would have been a much better way to go at it. So, yeah, I agree with you. If you know, chief can't just go sending anybody out to do anything, you know, because of liability and whatnot. It's definitely a lot more to it than just put water on fire. So.
Yeah, they used to do it to where as a structure firefighter, they came up with this hybrid class where it was kind of a combination of wildland fire and structure fire, and it was just to give you enough. Obviously, that's all changed and evolved since, because you're going into an entirely different
Yeah.
world.
Can
different
we
world, yeah.
still walk back in there with 5-gallon pump, yeah.
Well, I remember Joe Randall was telling me that he was in high school. And I
Yeah.
think it was the, can't remember what the name of the fire was, but they came down to high school, grabbed a bunch of high school juniors and seniors and said, hey, you're going up and helping us. And, you know, those days are over. Can't do that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is just because I hear it time and time and time again, you know, hey, I'm not able to, I have a family and I can't commit to all the hours of a regular volunteer does, but I would like to help in some capacity. Is there anything we can do this? So I've heard it a lot. I don't know if it's the right direction.
It's the right
I wanna-
direction.
The only thing
Yeah.
scary
I wanna pass
about
it forward.
scary about that is like what I seen, and I'm sure you've seen it, was the breakdown. The breakdown between the paid and those people that we had at Riverside. There was no organization, there was no anything. It was just kind of, we all felt like, hey, we're all on our own, including the paid people. They felt like they were on their own. We felt like we were on our own. You know, how you would try and orchestrate that would,
Well, I think it has everything to do with leadership.
Yeah,
Or a
absolutely
lack
does.
of, you know.
I mean, I remember running the truck up and down the highway. I'm like, I just want one of these Clackamas guys to stop me and say, hey, will you just keep water in this area? And that's all I wanted, you know?
Direction.
Yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
need, the direction.
Rather than doing what I thought was right, I mean, somebody that knows what the hell they're doing, tell me what the hell they want done.
One of the things you have to look at is when those fires started, most places have an emergency management system they set up. And back then it was in Clackamas, and it was done by Clackamas County itself, not Clackamas Fire, but Clackamas County, which Clackamas Fire participated in. One of the things we're looking at is setting up an emergency management working with the city here, so that when you do have an incident where we have a disaster, let's just call it that you activate it, you actually have an EOC down here to where you're on duty, your crews out there are working with the EOC, making sure that equipment and everything and how things are being orchestrated or handled. So it ties, when you start talking emergency management, it ties it more into what we're looking at for a fire district and the surrounding citizens and everything here versus this whole Clackamas County, which even then with emergency management, it's tied into Clackamas County, into their emergency management system. We can talk back and forth, but it puts more control right here in the city where we didn't have it before.
Yeah, it's something that we need locally is that a local emergency management, which is what I've tasked Alan with doing that. Airport guys were great for that. So that's kind of his world. But the Riverside fire was also a phenomenon. I mean, that was just an oddity to have that big incident plus 9 other large incidents in the state. Typically, you would have a different support system. We're just, it is what it is.
I always go back to that statement that Nick Brown said. In 72 hours, they had 144 fires in their district. I mean, that's
going to overwhelm anybody.
absolutely
Well,
daunting.
Two of the 3 major fires were in our fire district.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I think one of the things to recognize is, and correct me, Chief O'Connor, but you're pretty well known in the state for running wildland fires.
Oddly
mean,
enough,
you're-
yeah.
You're kind of like a guru when it comes to it, so I feel that we, as a district, are more prepared than from a global standpoint, right? So Chief O'Connor's been on some really big fires, and not as a guy holding a hose line,
Exactly.
as the guy running the whole fire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the thing we do have, and we're very lucky to have
Skill
Chief
set.
O'Connor at the helm. So I think,
Yeah, we're on the right track. And like I said, it'll take a little bit of time training wise and experience wise to get there, but we're on the right path. And the grants have made a big impact. They're going to help. Like no tomorrow, we've got people that want to do it. And obviously more people in the community that want to do it. So it's just going to get better. I won't make any guarantees for the upcoming summer, but I will tell you that this summer will be better prepared than even the summer before. So it's just stepping up.
An
So,
evolution.
right.
But as things warm up, and they are, the more we need to be prepared.
well, I think this was healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that we talk about some of these things in depth, so.
Moving on. In emergency operations, we are working on acting lieutenant officer development program, which is coming up at the end of the month, and that's going to allow firefighters to step up to the lieutenant position and when we have an absence. The chaplaincy program, which Director McAdoo might be a little close to, try to get that ramped up and get get a standard in place so that all our chaplains are on the same page. CERT program, same thing. Chief Smith's been real heavy into that one, and he's finding out that group has a whole lot of ability, and so he's pretty excited about what they can do for us. But same thing, getting it to where it's a structured program and that everybody's working on the same standards. I also have him, he's working on looking at our increased call volume, where our calls are happening, where in the district we're going, what the time standards are, and hopefully that'll guide us down the road. And then a line of duty death program. So hopefully we don't have to worry about that. But if we ever did have a line of duty death with a firefighter, we want to be ready for it. We don't want to be caught here with just looking funny. So, and then volunteer wildland firefighter program, like you were talking about earlier. On the logistics side, turnouts, personal protective equipment, how we're going to plan for now, the future, the growth that we have within our program is something that Lieutenant Rolichek's working on. Obviously, we needed everything new because we didn't have what we needed. So a lot going on there. Station maintenance program with a set budget, so we know what it is that we're trying to check for on the station every year. You know, HVAC and generators and sewer line replacements and all that fun stuff. Uniforms, same thing. We've got a lot of new people. We need a lot of uniforms. How do we maintain it? What do we need? Our apparatus replacement schedule, our small tool replacement schedule, which I have some of that. We're going to probably talk about that here in a little bit. We have a lot of things on here in this list that are actually going to be taken care of by the grant. So we're already working on it, which is great. But wildland personal protective equipment, equipment needed for wildland firefighting, apparatus maintenance plan, acquiring department, progressive hose lace for wildland fires, needed equipment for support roles in marine rescue incidents, training equipment for low angle rescue, test and maintenance on our main station and backup generators for both George and here in Estacada. BK radios and training, that's another grant thing. MDTs for apparatus, again, it's on the grant. Acquiring equipment for our faller program, that comes back into the wildland training and grants. Acquire needed equipment for configuration response, more grant stuff. It was good to see a whole lot of these get checked off with grant monies. That was just makes it all that much easier sooner than what we thought. As far as capital improvements, we're running into the issue of we're kind of bursting at the seams here with the current facilities we have. So what are we going to do for storage issues? We've got the, like I said, the sewer drain repair in the station. We should have that done here shortly. We got to look at diesel exhaust systems for the George station and the Estacada station. Right now, we really don't have a way for the exhaust in the station to go away. And we have people living in there, so it's not good for our cancer presumptive laws.
What, Chief, on that subject, we put in fans years ago in the engine room. When they went out to get in the truck, they'd kick them fans on and they would run. So that'd clear out the engine room. Do we still have that intact?
If I understand correctly, it's there, but it doesn't automatically kick on.
No, we had that as we went out the door.
But when you start looking at circumference, if you got the rig starting up or the rig starting up, it's not pulling out the cubic feet that it needs to, that's underneath OSHA law that we have to do. And OSHA's changed a lot. You just can't have a fan in there anymore. You actually have to have something on the rig that's capturing it and blowing it out, or a filtering system on the rig so taking captures.
So when I first got hired by Portland, we had tubes that you put on the exhaust, and I had a magnet, and it when you back in, you would put it on there and magnetic. And then over the years, and I don't remember when, maybe like a decade ago, they went away. And what they did is they retroed the exhaust with the
it's called a no smoke system. So
right.
what it is that it's a box that is
on the rig
that comes out. And there were some flaws with that at first because they were putting paper filters in. Then they went to a ceramic filter that you can actually pull off, send it in, they clean it and bring it back, and they put it a little more expensive, but you can cycle them back and forth. So that when the rig starts, this thing automatically kicks on as soon as it gets outside. after running a couple minutes, then it kicks back over to the normal self and goes around the box and starts kicking the smoke back out. And then as soon as you put it in reverse, they kick back on. So,
Right.
and it's, those systems are a little bit more expensive, but maintenance wise, they're a lot cheaper than putting in the rails and the track system that tear apart. And bounce
Right,
down the road.
I don't think we would have.
It's like a
enough-
muffler,
Yeah,
muffler.
I don't think we would have enough room between rigs to put that system in.
So
our
as we
station.
evolve into the new cleaner rigs, which we're gonna be buying a few of those, do those OSHA requirements step down a little bit because they're not nearly as dirty?
That I believe you're still gonna have.
Yeah, you still
Yeah,
gotta
so
do the
that's
filter,
something I
but-
would think, but I wouldn't think that it would be.
You still have to have the same type of system for the exhaust. So yeah, they're cleaner, but it's still exhaust.
So
It just brings particulates
Through
down
the-
while the rigs are out running
Yeah,
around, but
true.
it still has particulates coming out in a confined space. Like I said, cubic feet wise, it shortens it down. And that's where OSHA goes at, because then it brings up the carbon monoxide inside the building, and that's what.
through the reading that I've done, with this new rigs, supposedly the air going in the engine is cleaner than the air coming out of that engine.
That's what I've heard the same thing.
So there again, it's like, why would we need
Yeah.
to do that? But anyway.
Well, we'd have to replace our whole fleet, obviously. to
Oh,
get to
yeah,
that point, but-
yeah. But what I'm
but-
saying is we're getting what, 3 new rigs?
Right, right.
So I wouldn't think we would need something for those 3 new rigs. It's just the older rigs that we would.
Yeah, but we're actually going after AFG grant to help fund that program. I think we'll be successful.
Yeah.
If we don't get it this year, it's one of those I just keep trying to get because I think we would land it. It's firefighter safety. It's something that's supposed to have been in place for a long time. So it should be easy.
Well, and I would think
But-
that, if you're gonna build a new station, that you would be better off with a downdraft system because all that gas should go to the bottom because it's heavier than air.
New station would be different because then you're looking at, they've separated new stations out to where you have hot zone, warm zone, cold zone.
Okay.
And so basically it pressurizes the living areas and
Mhm.
it doesn't allow that exhaust to come
Get in
in.
there, yeah,
Right.
okay, that makes sense.
And those are actually, that's the way to go.
Actually, absolutely is, yeah.
But we're a little ways from that.
Yeah.
So with the grant monies, we're purchasing a type 6, a type 3 and a tender, and that just doing 3 of those all at once is a pretty big project. So again, that's going to keep Chief Smith awfully busy by itself. We purchased a new staff vehicle, that's done. We do need to purchase some additional SCBA's because we are short. And actually have Lieutenant Rolachek is going to bring a proposal to the next board meeting as a little professional development to present to this group and say this is what we need and why. And go from there. And then we got purchasing more hose, which is part of the grant. And EMS, we have to, we're actually already moving forward with it, but an MCI equipment. So in the event we have a bus turnover with multi-patient, multi-casualty incident out here, we're a little more prepared for it because right now we don't have anything. Doing case reviews with our physician advisor, we're currently on contract to do that twice a year, and that's something we're just supposed to do as part of our EMS training, but we're talking about increasing that to a quarterly event with him. Our EMR rollout, talked about that a little bit in training. Volunteer EMT rollout, we have 6 volunteers currently going through the EMT program, so that's going to change the dynamic in our volunteer ranks a little bit. We are moving our medical supply inventory to ESO, and that is almost done, isn't it? So that'll at least get the medical inventory into ESO for better tracking, and we'll probably increase that yet with an RFID project, RFID program. Tablet rollout and training, so we actually have the tablets on scene for EMS incident, and they can chart while they're there with the patient. Shift drill plan, we're actually probably going to evolve that from what it currently is. That's in the works, including more EMS training in our drill nights. And then we've got to do something different with our current EMS supply inventory and decon sinks and all that kind of stuff from where we are now. And I think the sink is part of our drain project we have in the station. And then EMS training, we have some needs there for a mannequin, some airways, IV, IO props. I think we already have a heart rhythm generator, but just some props for training that we're going to need down the road.
So we back up one step.
Mhm.
That sink, You guys know exactly what you need there?
Right.
I've got it all figured out.
You mentioned it to me. Yeah, I just want to make sure that when we get Pat in here that
I've
we
already
can
got it.
convey exactly
Yeah.
what we need.
I've
Okay,
already got it planned out for
I'll
you.
hammer him Monday and say, look, this has been long enough. We need to go here.
We did have another backup on the 20th, I think.
I know, I got the call.
In the prevention world, obviously, we're still a little bit of limbo with that because we don't have a permanent fire marshal in place, but we're trying to outline our inspections to be done here this winter, so we have a better idea for the year what we need to be doing for fire inspections. We need to get our hydrant inspection and flow tests going for the year, and that's a big one to maintain our ISO points. Requirements for new construction, residential and commercial, needs to be outlined. We have an address sign program for residential and commercial structures that's already in place. That's on the webpage now. People can come in and request an address sign. I think they pay us $27 for the materials, and we'll go out and put it in.
It used to be like $10. Wasn't it?
It's a long time
Inflation.
ago, yeah.
Inflation, yeah.
I thought
It's
it
on
would
a
be
piece
more.
of conduit with numbers.
Did we have a grant that paid for it for a number of
One
years?
time,
too?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Chimney cleaning program, same thing, getting that going. Actually, that's in place. People can come in and borrow chimney cleaning equipment, bring it back,
What if they're too old to get up on the roof?
and we call you.
And you get one of those creosote logs you just burn in there.
We want to get a smoke detector program going. Our fire safety prevention program, we're hoping to have that up by summer. Some of this stuff in our prevention world, COVID's just about stopped because we're not being allowed to go into certain places, and then we have restrictions on what we can do. So car seat, we'd like to see a child car seat safety program also that we can do locally. The company inspection program, we've been doing training for our on-duty guys, and I think all the shifts, all but one are done, or did the third
All
one?
the
get it?
shifts are done, but one person, and I'm gonna have a makeup class for that.
So we're pretty much got all our shift people. We're gonna do another one for our volunteers, the ones that didn't do it on the shifts. Our fire investigation program is underway. I think we have 8 or 9 people that just became qualified, well-trained, working on qualifications for fire investigation. A Knox box program for our commercial businesses, and then continue to meet with county and city partners so we can keep building those relationships. Training stuff was on here that I already talked about, so in a nutshell, that's the work plans from staff.
Big list.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's a lot of it is nothing crazy. It's just things we would probably typically be doing if we'd been in business for a while, but we've got to get it off the ground. So,
And most of those programs were all in place in the past. and
Right.
They kind of
they disappeared.
disappeared, yeah.
So I know that we have the grants and all that, but there's some stuff that you mentioned that falls outside of those grants. How does that reflect into our budget with the stuff that falls outside of our grants?
That's part of why we're here. So
Okay.
I wanted to share that information for future reference as we move forward and we get into the budget process, that this is what we're looking at and this is where we're going. Some of that stuff we're writing the assistance to firefighter grants. That's open now, closes in another week or two. And we're throwing applications at that real heavy. Safer is also open. We're throwing a whole lot of applications into that. It's kind of my goal to make us a federally funded fire district before I'm done, and I'm already well underway. So if it works out, a lot of these projects will be grant funded. The AFG and Safer do have shares, but they're 10% or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if we can get $100,000 and we got to fork out 10,
10, yeah,
let's
that's-
take it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
And
What about firehouse sub grants?
I haven't had much luck with that one, but that is out there. They're just typically a smaller number.
Yeah, 20,000, you might get 25, something like that.
But when we get done with the feds and the ones that are currently open, I mean, we'll keep pursuing grants. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of grant money. You just have to look for it and
Yeah.
chase it.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much, Chief. On these work plans, does anybody have any questions? Concerns?
Oh, I did have a question too. I might have missed it. But do we have a safety program planned to be in place? We used to have one years ago. They met every 90 days. They'd walk through the station, check.
That's part of the safety committee, and they actually have to meet every month.
Okay.
And they have to, yeah, it's OSHA rule. They have to post the meeting minutes. We have to do I think if facilities have to be inspected at least once a year,
Yeah,
which is pretty, because we only have the two, it makes it pretty simple. But yeah, there's some requirements there and they're doing it.
that's still going okay, good.
You can also call the insurance company and have them come out and do a courtesy
Yeah, yes,
tour with you.
well, SDAO will come out and they'll do a couple of trainings for us a year.
Or even tour the station and tour the
Right.
facilities and say, hey, you should do this. and do
Right.
that.
And I had another note here that I'm sure it's going on, but I didn't mention that our career staff are training with the volunteers, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, so we keep that cohesion there.
Yeah, it's a pretty regular occurrence to be sitting over there and have one walk in and ask, they're in their EMT class and want help to work on a skill, and when the career guys will get up and they'll go out and you can hear them in the other room doing what they're doing, and they're out here pulling hose, and you think of it, they're involved in it. So
Good.
there's very few days where there's not a volunteer over here interacting somehow or another.
I noticed that once, I stop in once a week for coffee or something. That's the way it used to be, and you got that cohesion there, a team.
Right.
That's-
We hired 3 career firefighters per shift, right?
Yes,
There's not always gonna be 3. But every time I walk in that station, there's 4, 5, 6 people,
I
7
know.
people
That's what
around
I'm saying,
that
too.
table.
It's not uncommon to walk in there in the afternoon and there's 6 people there just hanging out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
stopped in for whatever. Yeah. So it's still good. It's still going strong. So
that's
hopefully
good.
it keeps moving forward.
Yeah, 5 years down the road, I hope it's that way, so,
We hope so.
Okay,
thank you.
cool. Any more questions for the chief on the work plans? Okay,
I did have one more thing, I'm sorry.
no words.
I know we got pretty good community relations. But something I happened to think of today, I went back up to that Springwater Grange. The first Saturday every month, they have a community breakfast up there. The third Saturday of the month down at Clackamas Valley Baptist Church in their fellowship hall, they have a free community breakfast. And our firefighters used to take an engine, go down there, just have breakfast, and they're interacting. The community loves to see them there, you know, they're glad to see them. So I don't know if you thought about adding stuff like that in, if the guys are interested in doing that.
We get quite a few requests, and again, that COVID thing is playing into it,
That's
which
right,
is
yeah.
not helping my want to get us out more. But when we get those sorts of things that come up, we'll get a invitation to breakfast at the, you know, something going on out here. We'll put it out there. We can't always make it, but more often than not, they go. Or if nothing else, if 1 or 2 people can go down there, that'll happen.
Well, if I, since you now told and Cheryl's typing it in, I'll try to make a plan to go to the Springwater one.
Whenever the engine would go up there in the past, the people were just glad to see them and just tickled to
Yeah,
death.
we went over to the lighting ceremony here at City Hall. You know, not everybody could go, but the two of the on-duty career guys, they went over, brought the engine over, you know, and just, you know, we're here and everybody's coming up, talking to them, taking pictures and stuff.
Yeah,
So
the community loves that, and it's
Now, just
keeps that connection there, yes.
so you know, there's other functions around town other than just food related. John's always on that.
for some reason, I'm not getting the invite to the food one. So I don't know what's going on.
Notice that. Actually, they're probably just free to him. You know,
Right.
They don't want to charge him.
Yeah, speaking of COVID, that's the first time I've been up to Springwater in over a year. And they actually even had it shut down for quite a while, and they're just getting it up.
Since we're on the topic, there's obviously a big surge right now. I think they had 10,000 cases on Thursday. I don't know what numbers for yesterday came out yet, but we have one of our career fire medics has COVID. So he's going to be out for a little bit. We had another one with an exposure, a significant exposure. So he's going to have to go through the 7-day routine. They're at least they've shortened the numbers. Problem is CDC and Oregon Health Authority have 2 different things to interpret, and that's not helping my cause. But hopefully it doesn't spread through our ranks too quickly here. We're making some contingency plans just in case, but I'm hoping we can keep it to a dull roar.
Is workman's comp covering the
No.
COVID?
They're not. So I don't know if my experience here is we haven't done that yet, but where I came from at Brand X, We attempted that with the insurance company, and they view it as just like if you get cold or the flu or anything else. They're just like, no, this is just life.
Really?
Right? They wouldn't cover a COVID exposure, even if you could say, no, we transported a COVID patient, had direct exposure, but they still wouldn't. They weren't going to do it because they didn't want to open that box.
Well, that seems kind of ridiculous. Of course, I don't have workman's comp in Portland, but we're fully covered. You know, so it just seems, I think we're fully covered for 80 hours if you're on a daytime.
There is a program, and I need to figure out how to get us into it where, and it's got to be through workers' comp. There's a way to get reimbursed for time taken off for COVID, whether it's exposure or you have it. I just can't remember where that's at, and you have to get into the program and be able to get that back, which is what Portland's doing there. But I just haven't.
And you know, we're not in workman's comp.
Correct.
We're in FPD and REO.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to be in workers' comp. I
Yeah,
can't remember how the
I'm sure
program
they,
works.
trust me, it's a city of Portland. I'm sure they got the money from somewhere.
Yes, they did. Because we managed to get it over there. I just need to get Estacada into it. But part of the trouble that I'm running into is that because everybody is new, nobody's got a lot of time. So when I have somebody that's off for 14 days, you're looking at, okay, well, I can take 3 of those 4 shifts. I'm covered in the fourth one. I don't have time. So I'm doing a certain amount of administrative leave for some people, depending on the situation circumstance.
Well, good. I mean, we should be taking care of our people if it's somewhat job related.
Yeah, we kind of have to, I mean, at least that's my mind, how my mind works with it. There's some instances where, clearly they went to something else. They know they got it somewhere else. I mean, we'll try to help you as best we can, but versus the guy that we know we were in contact that day and it happened on shift. So
Did you say there was a difference between the CDC and the Oregon Health Authority for quarantine guidelines?
Yep.
Was Oregon Health Authority 7 days and CDC is 5?
yes. And OHA is at best 7 days. So depending on the circumstance, it could be 10, it could be 14.
So do we follow the CDC or the Oregon?
We have to follow Oregon Health Authority because that's who we're licensed through.
Well, I mean,
But a private business then would be,
Private you can do. Yeah, you're different. That's different.
yeah, yeah.
I had released
FDA occurrence would-
new guidance based on the CDC recommendation, and in a matter of hours, OHA came out and released something entirely different. So I had to go back out and redo it and resend it out.
that's interesting because it's all based on science, right? So originally it was 14 days mandatory isolation because it's all science based. Then it was 10 and now it's 5. It's just interesting.
Just interesting, or are you questioning science?
I'm just saying that
Publicly, it's just interesting.
I guess so, yeah.
all right, so no other questions on the work plans? We're gonna jump to the 2022 to 2023 board priorities for the budget. Remember, that's the July 1st of 2022 to June 30th of 2023. So that's a little ways away, but it's definitely a time to start talking about it. So I mean, what does the budget look like right now, Chief? Are we able to fund some of these reserve funds that we've pulled back and away from?
It's obviously early, but it looks to me like the money that was taken out of the reserve funds to fund the operation in that interim period, I think we're going to be able to put that back.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. We can probably add more to it for that matter, but I'm feeling pretty good about, for a capital reserve account, that we're going to be able to put $500,000 in there.
Okay.
And I think for a couple of years, we were stealing from those funds. And then when I say stealing, we were realigning what our priorities at that time was, because we were in a financial dire strait. And so as we start to get more healthy, maybe because of the expansion in the building and so on, I think it's important to really refocus what those reserve funds were developed for and make sure that we're meeting what they're intended for. So, I mean, the cost of everything's gone way up, and maybe those numbers that we were originally looking at need to expand and get.
Well, there's yesterday's dollars, and then there's 5 years from now dollars. For
Yes.
inflation as to what things will cost differently. You can plan and budget now, but you also have to budget what that inflationary distance is gonna be
Well,
also.
we have replacement schedules, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've developed over the years is we know that when you buy an F-350 and it's a brush rig or whatever it is, that we know that rig in 7 years, I'm throwing the number, but we know that it has to be replaced because of the mileage, the usage and so on. So I think we can kind of look forward to what that cost would be in, 2030 or 2027 and figure out like what those dollars potentially could be. So
Do we have a mileage threshold on any of these vehicles? I mean, is it
Typically,
5,000?
typically we wouldn't have a mileage because we don't put miles on, we put hours.
They age out before they
They
wear.
would
Yeah.
never wear out a set of tires.
Hmm.
They age out.
Hours are the big thing on a piece of equipment, so you end up between the two of time, operating time and years. And so what I've seen over my career is that you get to a point with an engine where something breaks and then you're trying to find the guy that used to work in the plant 30 years ago that might be nowhere you can find this part because they don't make them anymore. It's one of those type of things. And it seems like it used to be you could find parts for 30 and 40-year-old rigs, and now it's like it's hard to find parts for a 20-year-old rig. So it's all changing. So what I just passed around is the resolution from 2009, 2010. And it's showing you what was put in place at that time for capital asset depreciation for buildings, equipment, apparatus and vehicles. And I don't know who was here for that other than John for sure.
yeah, so John, you can't oppose anything on this because you signed it.
But I think this probably needs to be revisited. And that's something that we can do here, as part of this is the most recent one that we could find anyway. So if there's something more recent, I'm not sure where it is, but there was an older one from 94, I think, but it really didn't apply anymore.
So how do you feel that this fits with today's times?
I think my own personal opinion is we've looked at these vehicles like staff cars, especially brush rigs, you're closer to 10 years rather than 5.
Yeah.
Because they don't get the mileage on it.
One of my previous employers, I think staff vehicles, we said 7 to 10. That was more realistic because I think we had started the same thing as a 5 to 10, but 7 to 10, and we were typically going 10. So just because you could. Apparatus is pretty vague there. It puts 15 to 20, but you've got type 1s, type 3s, tenders. I mean, they all have a different
Might have to
lifespan.
break it down.
I think it needs to be broken down.
By category?
And in our buildings, they're older than 40 years old now.
Most of them out there are, so.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things moving forward, and not obviously for the upcoming board meeting, but I think one of the things, Chief, that we should probably be directing you to do is to update so we can adopt a new resolution that would accurately reflect what the capitalization policy would be for the assets.
Would that be looking at the buildings in their present state and saying, hey, we think we've got this many more years?
I think everything from apparatus.
Well, no, I'm just talking about buildings, so just because our buildings are old already. We did seismic upgrade and remodel this one. We did remodel George.
But that should add some value to it.
Yes, it should. And what do we think our time frame is? When they
replacement.
did the remodel over here with the seismic upgrade, the thought was that that's good for another 10 years. But
So-
really, what is it?
I figured to get
You're talking-
25 years myself.
I'm gonna bring something up, because you're talking seismic upgrade. I know that got kicked down the road on George.
Mhm.
Where does what liability does that bring on us that we did that?
We're gonna move the whole station to your shop. It's big enough.
As long as I can go down there, maybe the crew's dinner would be a little bit better than the wife's dinner, so that might be a good thing.
This is a public meeting.
That's
We
okay.
might
You're
be-
you're now on record. You're now on record.
But I mean, is there any liability we have on that? Things we did
I
that.
think the state mandated seismic upgrading,
Yeah.
All public buildings.
public buildings. So I think we
Right.
can go to the state and say, how much time do we have?
We could still bring in, the way I understand it, that grant got
Yeah.
postponed and we can still bring that up.
Well, we can apply again, and
Yes.
get a good chance of getting it.
Yeah, and I believe the reason why we kicked that can down the road, that was during the transition deal,
It
and
was.
we weren't sure financially where we were, and we didn't want to
We didn't want
put
to
that
commit
expenditure out,
because
yeah.
there was a match and it was
Yes.
so much fun.
And by the time we really got thinking about it, it's too late to even do anything.
Yeah.
So,
The seismic project's it's a big deal to do, you know, it's not just, oh, well, we'll, you know, do
We
that.
had a
as an
$4
offsite,
million
it's a full-time
budget,
project.
and
Oh,
part
yeah.
of that total gross $4 million budget was that grant was added in there.
Yeah, so maybe that's something to pursue.
We would have to pursue the grant.
The grant
Yeah.
again.
I'm
Get
almost
going on
positive.
that.
I remember there was some correspondence from the state or where whoever was offering the grant. That if we didn't accept it, there was a high capability that if we reapplied, we would definitely be guaranteed be in the front of the
Yeah.
line. And
I remember that, yeah.
That's
Can't
kind of
remember
like
what
I
the cost of
remember.
that
it, yeah.
expenditure
Mhm.
was.
It was
I
like
can't remember what
500.
the cost of that was.
Just shy of 600 grand. or
It
something
was
like that.
really low.
Actually, if you just went up there and got some for the apparatus bay, made some, well, you could do it.
The
Ken.
steel part, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the corners, tie all four corners together.
What is that, just a simple cross brace going
Something
on
like
the
that,
corner?
yeah.
Need an
We
engineer
need
to
an
do that.
engineer to tell us.
Yeah.
what to do.
That'd take care of the apparatus bay, and the living quarters is all one story. so,
well, and I think it's important because part of the grant also includes the engineering portion
yeah.
that, you know, that ensures that it's being done to the level it needs.
Have we ever had an asbestos abatement done there?
What year was that built?
That was in the 80s, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, I think right around 83, because I had just came here and that building was pretty well completed,
We haven't
yeah.
Looked into, but I think that we're probably pretty good there. with-
And then we put,
There wasn't.
we
any.
put about $80,000 in that building too.
To remodel it.
Yeah.
The Generator and remodel. the
Updated
inside
the
and all that
generator
stuff,
and-
yeah.
Uh,
So just doing a
The
seismic
generator has been
upgrade.
updated?
No, the generator has not been updated. That thing is, it looks like it's from World War II. And the only
We
way.
got John's from World War II. Don't be throwing.
The only way
I
that
was
generator
born
works-
before World
Yeah,
War II.
okay.
The only way that
4
generator
months
works
before they
is
bombed
power
Pearl
goes
Harbor.
out, somebody has to go up and turn it on. It's not an automatic generator.
I
So.
thought
That can be changed.
We talked
Yeah, I know
about that, and I
but
thought it was
it's an
done,
old
but I
one that
guess
you
it
have to
didn't get
find,
done.
and
Well, I
there's-
think it
there's
may have
problems
been
Was it
one that we
gas?
got as
Huh?
a
Was it
surplus
gas?
from
No, it's
someplace.
diesel, but you have to
but
find
it's
it,
a-
and
it's a
there's
generator
a-
that-
There's a whole step that you have. to
Might
do.
have been there a dozen years, but
Yeah.
it's not what, because it never
It's
had a
the second
generator
one.
up there years ago, did it?
Yeah, that's our second one that we
Second
got
one
up
up there,
there
yeah.
now.
So
But I remember we had, it might have been in that seismic grant, but I thought we upgraded that generator, but I guess we haven't.
No,
yet.
it's like I said.
But
it's
that's our
usually-
second one up there.
You know if it's a
usually the
FET?
ones, if you do it,
Huh?
they're gonna be automatic.
Was it a FET generator?
What's a FET?
Federal excess
Yes,
property?
it was. We got it
Probably, yeah.
through, I think we got it through Camp Whittingham.
Well, I
think.
know the one that we put out here, remember? We had
That
out
was from
back, it was on
Camp.
that little track thing that I built.
You mean
Yeah.
the one at 11 o'clock at night, I rolled a flatbed truck into the army base there.
Yes.
That's
that
the one.
And then I brought it over here.
Yeah.
That's
and
the
then-
one.
the one you had to give back.
The one that,
Think it had to
15
get
years later, they were wondering where it went.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, if we want to pursue upgrades for that station, you know, seismic and generator and all that, I mean, that's something we can certainly.
I think we should get back on that
I'm just saying. when you look
request
at
to
it.
do a
Yeah, okay.
grant or do a grant
I
to
mean-
get back into the mix.
With
Right,
everything
yeah.
we're
It's
pursuing.
my
you know, it's-
understanding that it had something to do with your ISO rating also, that your
No.
stations, if they weren't seismic upgraded, that.
I don't think it's
I don't-
evaluated,
no.
it's
Okay, I
hydrants
don't
and.
think so.
Okay, okay.
So we had we got our ISO rating dropped up there, but that was not sure that was all done properly.
But that was like
But-
3 years ago, wasn't
But
it?
part of that was doing this water tender task force with these other districts was be able to, they were using water tenders from out of district to make that seismic up or make that ISO rating a little bit less.
Oh, okay, okay. That
Now, I'm
makes
not
sense
sure
then.
that was all proper that Morrissey did, but
But that's how he got the credit. for
That's
the
how he
water
got
supply.
it.
Yeah.
So it was using other districts.
Yeah, ISO's got so many moving parts to it, but that is a big one. And Estacada has an ISO 3, which is a great rating for a small district. Thanks. So that's something I'd want to make sure to be careful of, that we can maintain that. You know,
Yeah. Oh,
I think we'd have to make some significant changes, I think, to ever get a 2, but we definitely don't want to lose the 3.
Yeah, so I don't know what's the process of, how often should you do your ISO rating stuff? Is it regulated or is that scheduled or is that?
So typically, once they do it, they aren't going to look to come back for 15 years unless you ask to be regraded.
Okay, then we just need to
And at this point, yeah, at this point, I would leave it alone, especially where we're at. I mean, we're definitely a few years from
Yeah.
wanting to have a regrade.
I agree with you 100%.
We don't want that to go up anyway.
Right.
Well,
You
I
don't
would
wanna take
just
that chance.
kind of keep quiet with this, what we
Yeah,
got now.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, and I think we've also, I mean, we've got to look at setting goals for the chief, right? But
Yeah,
they've got to
yeah,
be
I mean-
immediate, they've got to be long-term. I mean, one thing that we got to be careful, I think, as a group is not overloading them so that now they're balancing 50 projects and all of them half-assed because they don't have the time and the effort.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I was about to say the same thing.
Well, that's what I mean.
No,
I mean, I think I think what we've got to be careful in, like with George, maybe what we say, chief, we want you to maintain the ISO rating, do it at all costs.
Right.
And then we'll look at upgrading and seismic and different things.
I only brought the upgrading up for
Right.
the seismic only because that's something you probably did not know.
Well, it's one of those that if we want to continue to upgrade that station, then it's, I don't think we want to take it all at once, right? Well, then next year we could probably do the generator or something like that. The following year we could do the seismic, and just
Yeah.
keep stepping it. It's achievable. and
I
it can
think
be
there's
done
definitely
well.
more important things on the list to deal with right now than that.
Yeah,
Like I
you
said, I
got-
only mentioned it because I wanted you to be aware of it.
And the seismic's going to be based on getting a grant. We're
Yeah,
not
and
gonna
I
go out
think-
and do a
yeah,
seismic
I think you
without a
could set
grant.
that as a goal, maybe max 5 years out or
5
something.
years
Yeah.
old type thing.
But I think a generator, if we can get on that, whatever you think.
Sounds like that one probably needs
Next
to be
year or
done
so.
sooner than later.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
that's,
we
it's
lost-
like during the storm, the snowstorm.
yeah,
I went up at 2 a.m. with one of the volunteers who changed up, chain that rig up. And we've got stuff that's plugged in that is an essential for this, for that station to operate. And if the power goes out, all that stuff goes down and you have to go in there manually and reset everything and bring it back up running again. So, and we do have crews on a monthly basis. We're staffing the station a good quarter of the time up there. So we actually do need, because of the fact that the computers and all that stuff running up there, we actually do need to have something that kicks on automatically instead of trying to run out there in the middle of a storm, trying to start the thing back up again. So it's,
And we've lost power up there for 7 days before.
Yeah, if you're in the station, you don't have a generator to back it up, call comes in, you're not gonna know about it.
Yeah.
All that's out, but just kind of to put it in some perspective, I'd replace the St. Helens backup generator system, which is significantly larger than what that station needs. But I mean, start to finish, generator and connection and switches, so it's all auto and it would power the entire thing. It's about $43,000. So I can't imagine it being that much for that small station there.
We might want to think about if we're gonna do it though, next year, ordering it now.
That would be the other problem we've come up against.
yeah.
Yeah,
Long
no.
Ways out.
Right.
Yeah, just give you an instance. I ordered my generator. I got it within 2 weeks. My brother had ordered 2, one for his place in Schaefer's up on Kinsey. And they're still waiting and he ordered it like, I'm gonna say 6-7 months ago. So just give you an idea what the,
Yeah, they're saying
It-
generators on a minimum right now are 8 months out.
So if we budget for in July.
I
Yeah,
kind of
you
agree. I
probably
think
make
that's a priority, get that straightened up there.
Overall, that station's in great shape. I mean, it's got some other cosmetic things that we can take care of, but that's all just maintenance, type of things. But the station is nice, and that I think that's what's helping attract people who want to go and stay up there. It makes a difference.
Yeah, like I say, I think it's been less than 5 years that we put quite a bit of money in upgrading that. So.
Do we think that we should work on applying for a seismic upgrade just to get that process started?
Well, it takes some time to write it. I mean, you could set like a goal of, I mean, right now, the biggest thing for me is the whole wildland interface, right? I
So it
mean,
gets back to what we all agreed,
Right.
don't put too much on Chief's plate.
Right.
And John said 5 years.
I think that's a
I-
worthy
I
goal.
think that's a,
Let's
Yeah,
unless
revisit
you
it.
disagree with
No,
that.
I'd prefer to wait on that project,
Yeah.
not this next year, but the following might be reasonable. I
Alright.
mean, we'll see how things
Right.
evolve, but
That'll be
if we
next-
say within 5 years, that's
Yeah.
achievable.
That'll be next year's January work session discussion.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
cool. So about the budget process, the calendar, do we know when we're gonna have our meetings?
I was working on the draft for that and then I seem to have damaged my foot, so it kind of slowed me down a little bit.
Typically, what we've done in the past, chief, is typically tentatively, you would develop something, you'd ship it out to us. And then we would have our first meeting in late March, I believe it would be. And then we tentatively set a second meeting in April, and then we'd have the adoption in June.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the schedule we've always stuck with.
The schedule will be a little more comprehensive just because of what I put in there for budget requests for staff and then our review of it internally and then
Okay.
on down the line for the board and the budget committee and how we send it all out. But you'll see it sooner than later. Like I said I wanted to have it for you today, but there's something I'll have to send out to you here.
That's fine. Yeah.
Totally, but I think
It'll
that,
be good at least to put those dates on the calendar because
Yeah.
obviously we'll have to have other meetings outside of the board meeting.
John, how's your schedule in late March? And then April if the second meeting was required. And then one year we did get into a crunch and we did our first meeting in April and our second meeting in May. So it's not like, I mean. we.
Oh, no, that's, I mean, where I've been before, that's typically how those ran. We were in May when we were doing the first and second meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
So I'm kind of used to that being later on in the year. Sooner, of course, is better, but
right.
As long as we got good data and everything moving forward, there
Right.
shouldn't be any hiccups.
Mhm.
and we've had that during a board meeting before too, open up the budget meeting.
yeah, so
We had a separate budget meeting, but then we did
typically your first budget meeting would be just for the budget
yeah.
Committee, yes.
for the committee, but your second one, you would reopen it at a regularly scheduled board meeting and then close it. And
But we tentatively, this is how we always did it. The first meeting was set, it was like 2 hours long. And if it went longer and there wasn't an agreement, then there was a second meeting for just the budget committee. And then the next meeting was at the June board meeting and we would open it for public comment. I'd go
Right.
out of the board meeting, I'd open it, the meeting, and then I'd open it at the beginning and let it run throughout the budget.
Right.
Through the regular meeting, and then I would close it and then we would adopt them.
yeah, actually, yeah, I think you're right. You do the first, you do the second, but you only do the second if there's a need to convene that.
Right, correct.
But if the first one goes fine, everybody's agreed, you don't need to do the second. So
Right.
we just put it on the calendar just in case.
So, John, your schedule, maybe we could come up with those dates right now. I mean, how's May looking for you?
Well, my schedule changes day, but April, May. You probably want to have it on a Thursday or
It could be whenever.
the 12th is open.
The 12th is for the first,
Actually, yeah, the 9th, 10th and 11th is open. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That week I'm open right now.
how does everybody else look?
That's too far out to really worry about it for me.
Well, I think we did the first one on a Saturday because it would help with the committee members to be able to attend if they were working.
I never remember a Saturday.
Wasn't it a
It was
Saturday?
always in the evening.
Yeah, it was always.
Oh,
on the
was it?
evenings.
Okay.
We've got the crew academy going during that time too. so-
Yeah, we need to do
Yeah,
it.
if
We
you
need to
wanna-
do it in an
If you
evening.
wanted to take like a 5-minute recess, I could print out what I have.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute
Do
break.
that.
Did you find
And kids over, or some high school student wants them. I get the bucket, I drive the tractor, they throw the limbs in there and I throw them in.
5-foot rigs.
I'm gonna look at that. I never thought of that, yeah.
All right, we're gonna return from our recess. Chief, do you want to explain about the budget calendar?
So I started working on this here not too long ago, and starts off with, this is kind of following what I found here at Estacada and then what I've done with previous departments. But the board sets the district goals in January and February for the budget. I need budget consideration forms to myself and command staff by March 17th. And that's coming from our line staff, volunteer and career. And then we review those by the 31st. We complete the budget review and prioritize by April 7th. We finalize a proposed budget by the 11th of April. Proposed budget is available to the public by the 14th. Budget committee meeting would be on April 28th. And then the regular board meeting on May 19th would be the second budget committee meeting if needed. The last date to approve would be May 31st. Budget hearing, where the board would formally adopt it, would be June 16th. And then I have the regular board meeting to adopt the budget, make appropriations, declare the tax levy by resolution on the 16th of June also. And then submit the adopted budget to the assessor in the state by July 15th. I believe that's the last date to do so. And then we have the last day to submit a copy of the budget to the county clerk is September 30th.
How does that look for everybody scheduled the 28th of April? I mean of April, and then the potential for a second meeting on May 19th.
I'm good with
Yeah, I
that.
think we're good. Yeah.
The only issue I have a little bit with is the 16th of June. That's my anniversary, but.
That's our regular board
Yeah,
meeting.
so we'll
We
just do
can,
it anyway. Yeah.
you want to move it?
No, I don't.
Did you say that was your second anniversary?
No, it's just my anniversary. I can't remember how many years spent already.
So he's
I'm
calling
waiting,
it
I'm waiting for
Well,
parole.
the comment about the food thing earlier,
Yeah.
you might not be having an
That's true,
anniversary
that's true.
coming up, so.
Yeah, those are small offenses.
Okay, so with that being said, it sounds, Chief, that the board's involvement on these meeting dates would work, so I would just publish it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I was talking to Cheryl at the break and suggested to her that some of these important meetings, like I think regular board meetings come on our calendar already, they're already kind of preset. But like some of the other meetings, like this meeting and, you know, any workshops or budget committee meetings, she's gonna pop out Outlook invites to where we can just click accept and it pops right into our calendar and we don't have to worry about manually putting them in or forgetting about it.
Right, excellent. Hey, Chief, since we're talking about finances, maybe an update to the board on the part-time finance officer that you were pursuing to hire.
Yeah, so that has been advertised. It closes on the 12th. It should be this next week. I've got 11 applications, I believe. I have I just got another one, which might be my best one yet, that showed up last night. So I'm going to interview 5 people tentatively, unless something else comes in here in the last minute on the 18th. So by the next board meeting, I should be able to come to you and say, this is where I'm at, and I'm hopefully making a conditional job offer at that point. But after being kind of concerned of doing a part-time position, apparently there's some people looking for part-time positions. And said the most recent one is, it fits every checkbox. So we'll see what happens.
Great, very good.
Excellent, thank you. Any further questions concerning the budget process? For the chief?
Do we need to add more people to the budget committee? I know I was on it, but I.
Oh, that's right, we've got to appoint somebody to,
Add someone.
right, so we'll, we'd have to do it at a regular board meeting, so Chief, why don't we see the positions, make sure that everybody that's on it is still interested in being on it, and then we have a vacancy, obviously, with Director Day, and then have potentially some candidates that potentially we can adopt at this next meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe we could advertise on our website if we have a vacancy.
Social media,
Yeah.
Facebook.
Okay.
Karen's still on it, isn't she?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we re-elected her.
Maureen and Karen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we might just be missing one person, yes.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody.
All right, excellent. Any further questions concerning the budget process? Okay, so future capital needs.
So we talked about the apparatus replacement plan, and so myself and staff will reevaluate that and see if we need to make some adjustments to that, which I'm pretty sure we do. But with that, looking at the grants we have with what we're buying and where we currently sit, I don't see apparatus wise, I don't see any huge purchases on the immediate horizon. The two white staff vehicles that we currently have would probably be due, but we're gonna actually put a little money into those and rehab them to a certain degree and extend the life on them. I'm not sure, we haven't really come to a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year thing for it yet, but we're looking at that, but put a little money into those, extend that out, and maybe the rescue might be next on our list of to-dos, but might be a little preemptive to say we need to do that just yet or in the next 2 or 3 years. But that's really the only thing I see apparatus wise. We have in our small tools, what we call small tools, we have like extrication equipment, SCBA, thermal imaging cameras. Those aren't really small items. They're small by comparison to a fire engine, but they're still bigger capital needs. But that's something we're also looking at, and I could see us needing to do some of that here over the next couple of years. So we're looking pretty hard at it. But when we start talking capital and the big projects, then we're talking about stations. And that's a big topic. And I know I've talked to a few of you here individually about some of that. I believe where we sit right now with our current headquarters station and the George station, we're okay, but we're pretty much maxed out. I mean, we're at capacity. Any growth that we have personnel wise, equipment, et cetera, we're limited by what we currently have. There's options of, we could bring in another modular building like this one for more office space. We could put up a pole barn out here on this other property, but it's all a Band-Aid. And I don't know if that's really the best bet for what we're currently doing. My proposal for the immediate future for some of this would be to look for some local office space to lease, a building down here in the industrial park to lease. I could put all our administration in one of those office buildings if I have something with 6 or 7 offices. We're maxed out. I mean, as it is right now, the kitchen's going to have to get turned into another office. But if I could do that, this building, this would stay the training room, would stay the board room, but that would allow me to move EMS supply back here where I already have a sink and all that and a refrigerator. That would help us tremendously there. I could have an adequate space for uniforms, for our PPE storage. And in the event that we had financial problems and we said, yeah, you know what, we can't afford it, we need to cut that, we could always blow it back up and move back in here, and we're not on the hook for something along those lines. That's my fix for the immediate future, would be to pursue something like that. There's some buildings down there that actually have an apparatus bay. We have one of our volunteers who is contracting for maintenance with us. You could use that office or that bay for apparatus maintenance in addition to the office space. It probably would end up costing us more that way, but I really like that idea. If nothing else, I think office space lease is the best direction for us for the immediate future.
Instead of a modular unit like sitting out here,
Right.
you lease a building and you got a bay for doing work in. And
Right. We would kind of be taking more of it's a little bigger department type of setup where you have your administration in a different location from everything else. But if I'm going to have a station captain, then the station captain truly becomes a station captain here. They actually would run that station, and administration runs the district. We have a volunteer station captain out at George. It's kind of on my radar to have a station captain over here on the career staff. If I do something on the volunteer side, I try to do it on the career side. If I do it on the career side, I try to follow it just to keep it meshing, keep things as even keeled as I can. I hired a chief. I moved the chief up, you know, doing those sorts of things, but office space is pretty limited. So that's something to think about. We've talked about the future growth to the north. Do we put in a substation up there? Do we put in a new headquarters station and this becomes a substation? How do we fund it? All that are things that we need to move on, but it's not something that's going to happen this next fiscal year.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, I say at best, we're 5 years from that, and it's probably longer, but
The one thing that I think, Chief, you and I have had a couple discussions over this, but there's different mechanisms of figuring out how, if we do growth, and it's got to be data driven, right? I mean, so the chief's got a lot of hard work to do with that, but if at some point, as these subdivisions go more and more north, there is a capability of doing some sort of legislative thing through the city and through us, dictating that if you're going to develop this piece of 100 acres, 80 acres, and you're going to put in 3 phases, 4 phases of subdivisions, that you develop a piece of land that's fair for us to put a future station in. Does that make sense? So that then it is exactly where we need it to be, at the northern end of our district, as it continues to expand, and then it'll be in the middle or at the northern end. And then we know that it's big enough for a substation, you know, so it could be 3, 4 city lots that they just simply leave it there bare. It belongs to us. And then that we take it over. Because I think one of it's more cost. It's better for the builder versus saying, which I don't want to do, right? Because look, this is the problem I have with doing something with the city, where every time a house goes in, we charge them $1,400 or whatever that goes into a fund, right? Because my problem with this is, you're building in Sandy, you're building in Happy Valley, you're building in Damascus, and nobody else does that, right? So once we start doing that, then what we do is we drive the builders to different locations. And I don't think it's good for the growth of Estacada. So, but one of the other things we could do is say, hey, we need 3 lots. And to them, that's manageable, you know, because then they, as they're doing and they're drawing in their subdivision, they're drawing in the location that we want as we work with them, right? So it's not a dictatorship, it's a partnership. And then they do it, and then it sits there for the future. And as the district goes more and more north, we suddenly decide that we've got to pull the trigger. I don't think, I know some people have talked about headquarters up north or whatever. The part of the thing is, we did a lot of negotiations, as we remember, for this parcel over here. We did all sorts of plans of developing this into a training headquarters. We included a building. We went after a grant. It wasn't the right time. So in the future, that may be something that be done, right? We even had the city
Give us this
just
street.
give us the street
Current street's ours whenever,
whenever we,
it's ours if we develop the property.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's a city
Right.
street.
if we don't, then we'll.
but we own that, and we own all of this. So
Right,
there's
so
no-
I got a copy of the, there's an IGA that exists between the district and the city, and I got a copy of that from them, which I didn't know existed until it was, hey, we have this, you know, here you go. So that actually helped, because I'd heard that the city belonged to the district, or the street belonged to the district, and we could do something with that. It does if we develop the property.
right, and that's where I think that if we go for a major headquarters and a training center all encompassed at the same location, I think we're already set up here. There was a lot of hard work done to do that, and so moving headquarters more north, I don't think would be the answer. I think it'd be more reasonable to say a substation, and then start planning, and over the years start putting together a reserve fund for that.
So I disagree with you a little bit.
Right.
So I look at this, so set funding aside for right now, say we can have whatever we want. I look at Clackamas down there on 130th. They have their station, they have their training facility, they have their maintenance, all in that area. 3 lots or this lot would not accommodate that. And then I look at, say we were to build a new station here. The demolition costs of this station, of taking this out and everything else is gonna be a heck of a cost driver.
Mhm.
I feel we would be better off looking at finding a whatever size piece of ground, wherever the optimum place is in our district, and site develop that while we still have all this going on. How are we gonna maintain service? I mean, we obviously can't tear that station down and build a new station there. I feel that we pretty much lived out the life expectancy of this station. I mean, we're right there on the cusp. I feel that the district is not gonna be able to fund a new facility. We are gonna have to go for a bond or something. I feel that we need to get a fund going for this so that we can show the citizens that, hey, we are preparing for this. We're not asking you to run, the full brunt of the cost of it. I don't know, I guess when you try to build something with what you have, it's like remodeling a house. You know, it always costs more to remodel a house than it is to build a new, and you're stuck within a footprint of what you have, rather than figuring out what you need. Going back to this here where we had, 25 years to 40 years. So let's look down the road 30 years. What's the growth gonna be out here in 30 years or 40 years? I sure don't wanna build something that's only good for 20 or 25. I've talked to the chief about this, making sure that we build a fire station that is modular in the aspect that we can remove a wall and add more bays. Or we can come out this side with more accommodations for sleeping and everything else. I just feel that we're limited here. We talk about becoming this training facility that is well-known and everything else that, somebody else applies for a job, say at Portland or Clackamas or whatever, they see the Estacada training that, oh yeah, that's, they got a good program. It's looking at all the pieces in the pie and figuring out where to go. I don't feel this footprint is the footprint 40 years from now or 30 years from now.
I never thought of it that way, but
And if you look at the value of this property here versus the property we would end up somewhere else, there's a higher dollar volume or value on this piece of property because of its location in the city. So it's something we need to look at. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. When we had the vote for a new firehouse here, I voted no. And it wasn't because of what went on years ago or any of that. I seen the growth we had coming. When I was in Happy Valley, we had the same vote and it passed. The growth went so fast that by the time they got that firehouse remodeled and done and everything, it was already at its limit there. And I felt the same thing would happen here. And that's kind of where I feel we're at here, is that we would put money into this, building a new one or whatever, and yet
you're talking about the old Happy Valley
you don't have to.
where he was fire chief.
Yeah, and where I grew up, yeah.
We remodeled that once when I was.
Yeah, and so basically, the needs for the community were not met because of the amount of growth explosion there was. We all know that there's gonna be a correction or recessions through the years and whatnot. It's gonna slow things down. I agree with you 100%. Once you change the price point for people moving out here, you're gonna get less people. I agree with you on that. We don't want to charge $1,400 a lot to fund our new firehouse. I don't know, there's a lot of decisions, but I think first of all, is figuring out what we need and what is gonna be 30 years down the road. So that in 20 years, we're not in the same position we're in now. To where we're saying, okay, now we gotta do something again.
So I think this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there's lots of good points coming here, and I think that we should really consider in the future putting a work session together after some data is retrieved by the chief, and then to sit down probably late in the year. I mean, because we've got a lot of stuff going on. We gotta get through the summer, so maybe sometime in October, November, and put a work session together
January, February next year.
next year, something like that, anywhere from October on to January, and maybe set a date and then work towards.
Yeah, we
slowly
could
getting
set,
the info.
set some work session dates down the road, you know, one specifically for this topic, and we should be doing one here first of the year-ish anyways,
Yeah,
just for the
yeah.
sake of looking forward to the
Yeah.
budget. But like in all the talks of all the new station remodels, all that kind of stuff, for me, you gotta tell me, I mean, do
Right.
we even want to pursue it?
The
you know, is
question
it-
I have for you, chief, is where on the priority list do you feel this is?
It's, I wouldn't say it's at the top, but it's gonna get there real fast.
Say it's in the top 5.
Yeah. It's gonna be
So
an
I
issue.
think coming up with some fund for it, not saying we're putting a dollar amount on it, but
Right.
some way to start funding it, starting an account for it. We realize this is the position we're in, so we need to prepare.
So chief, I think you're getting direction, and correct me, directors, I think you're getting direction that for your budget, developing your budget for a new reserve fund. We're requesting like a new reserve fund for, and it doesn't have to be heavily funded to begin with, but at least established for a future expansion of Estacada Fire, you
Yeah,
know,
it'd be a capital reserve fund and
Yes,
just
yep.
be another line in there that we wanna-
another line
We
specifically.
did have a building fund at one time.
But that was specifically for this. I think we should label it like a capital, future capital outlay, however we label it.
This is the first step, in my opinion.
And
this
it's
is-
showing the public that
Yes,
we're
yes.
planning for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, one thing that, I don't know, Paul, you might not realize this, but if we were, when we talked about putting a new stations facility here, that would be open and running while the rest of this got built, because this is a modular building.
Yeah,
so
I
demoing
understand that.
this
I
is not
understand
gonna be much.
I understand that.
But I think we need to, first thing to do is decide whether this piece of land is going to work for a future development. And if it's not,
That's
Then
what
we-
this work session that
then
we're
we
talking
put-
in
yeah.
October.
Does anybody know how much property is actually here?
There's 0.69 acres across the street there.
is that with the
0.69
training
acres
facility?
Here.
Yeah,
and that
That's
doesn't
what the
include
training was-
Yeah, so we got
Yeah.
0.69 and 0.69.
Yeah,
So that's an acre and a
Yeah.
I mean,
half.
there's.
Does that
Right,
include
right,
the,
right. Quite an acre and a half.
Huge station.
yeah. And then you got the street.
Look at Sandy.
Yeah,
You toured Sandy.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Sandy's way
station.
bigger than us.
and it's a smaller lot, right?
They use urban renewal funds to do that.
Yeah, the only thing is
So-
when you go up, it's.
And I want to say something,
Cheaper to go
you
up.
know, so was, and everybody's kind of talking about not charging this, you know, fee because it's gonna, you know, limit growth. $1,400 a home is not gonna-
I threw a number out. It might be
Yeah,
more.
yeah. And I'm just saying, if
Right.
we were to charge $1 a square foot to fund us, I mean, there's about 1,400, I believe, homes in the works. We have a narrow window of time if we're gonna take this opportunity. And it could mean a couple $1 million that we could put into that fund. Now, that being said, we're also gonna be competing against schools too. Because our kids are, I mean, they're busting at the seams, and the taxpayers passing a bond for a new fire station in a new school district, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and
So
this,
we-
and
I
the
feel
school
like we
district
need
is
to do
currently,
this.
they're taking advantage of that. They do have that,
50 cents per square foot.
right?
They are, but they're not using it for their fund to build a new school.
Right.
And I've actually talked to some of the school board directors on this and some of the people in the community and got their opinion. So the reason we're having to build a new station is because of the growth in
Yes.
the city of Estacada. It's not because of the taxpayers that have been here forever. So my opinion would be to try to really go for this.
So what do you think about having the builders prepare and develop us? So maybe move our meeting or work session up sooner to come and maybe come to a consensus. And what do you think of, and out of that meeting, we decide whether it's going to be maybe potentially a charge per square foot, or is it, we just want the land donated by the builder?
Well, if you're out building, I mean, a piece of land is that's your smallest expense. Your construction is gonna be probably 4 times what your land
Absolutely.
So, and, you know, where they're developing, who's to say that's even the right spot to put it? I mean, I think it's a great idea,
Right.
but, I mean, you know, it's gonna cost probably $2 million.
That's part of that. We gotta
at least
we gotta get some
for the
data.
station.
to even know if that's what it should be.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's what I was sitting there thinking, and I wanted to add on. For years, as we've looked at our call volume, this station is right in the center of where the majority of our calls are. That could be changing as we build out there, but for years, this was the ideal location for the main station. And I'm also open to sitting down and talking with the builders and developers. There's, what, about 3 or 4 of them right now? And just tell them, due to this development, we need to expand. We don't have the funds. Could you charge so much a lot? Because they'll pass that on to the sale of the house. $1,400, $2,000. They'll add that on to the sale of the house.
As long as we don't make it a tax. We
Yeah,
just do it through the builder.
yeah.
So I would be more, I would be more
So
open
I
to
would
that.
like
I
to
just-
look at that.
I don't want there to be a tax.
No,
Pulling a permit right now is as expensive as it can be, and adding an extra fee, it just seems like a deterrent. And if anything, I'd want the builders on board with us, right? So that they're not deterring from building here. So it would need to be a partnership.
I don't think they're deterring from building there, I mean, like Polish Homes.
I don't.
No, I'm just,
They're building all over the state, and that's their number one sale. And, you know, they were building a house for $300,000 2 years ago, and now they're selling for $1,400. Like, yeah, but we're gonna need to expand, and the reason we're gonna need to expand is because of the growth here in the city.
so would you agree that going with and partnering with the builder would be the avenue for that?
Now, I don't know I don't really know the rules of it. I know that we can impose a fee, but I don't know if it's working with the builder or something. with the
So
city.
if we're
City-
gonna,
it'll be the
if-
city.
yeah, if we're gonna
The city
impose
will
a
collect
fee, we gotta do it through the city because
Yep.
they're the ones that would collect that
Yep.
fee on our behalf. And they've already offered to do that without even, well, if I remember right, without the administrative fees and whatnot, they would make that happen. Something else to consider when we start talking about growth to the north is that there is a neighboring fire district with a station over there that's closer to a lot of that and can have a shorter response time. and-
Mutual aid.
Well, mutual aid, but if they're proving that they're responding there quicker, they could potentially absorb that chunk of the district.
Well, and that's it too. You gotta realize the town is not gonna go that way. You'll get a few more homes up in the hills and everything. It's all gonna go that way.
Right.
We're up against the hills and everything here. It's that's the direction that it's going to go. So what's scary to me is that we talk about expansion, you know, take the facility out of it. It's my understanding, it's not just putting another career guy on or 2 career guys on. When our call volume starts going up and up and up and up, it's basically gonna be doubling what we have, isn't it? I mean, like, we got 3 paid now. As our call volume goes up, our back-to-back, I know we got the volunteers that are covering everything now. I mean, we're covering everything probably better than we ever have, wouldn't you agree? That we're,
We're in good shape now, and that's kind of the message that I'm
yeah,
conveying.
yeah,
As it sits today. I don't know if that'll be the case next year. Our call volume will get to a certain point where we don't have enough staff to cover it.
yeah, see, and that's the threshold
Right.
that scares me, because then all of a sudden, we don't have sleeping quarters. Where are we gonna?
There's formulas out there, and I'd have to look them up to see that it'll tell you, it recommends you should have this many people on duty to cover this call volume, whether it's
Okay.
career, volunteer, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'd have to look into that a little bit more. When I look back to when I started at Forest Grove, we're running about 2,400 calls a year. We didn't transport, we had 5 people on shift.
Yeah.
We're sitting at about 1,500 right now.
Okay.
And
Three-
5 people manage 2,500 calls a year.
Yeah.
So if you use that same kind of model, you know, we're gonna have to keep expanding,
Yeah.
and we're really limited to be able to do that at this point.
So would there be any advantage to say that we had to put on 2 more career people or whatever to actually put them at George?
George is so far out, and it's such
That's
a
how I feel
small
too.
piece of our
Yeah,
call
and-
volume.
And that's
We're doing that, and we've
Yeah.
actually talked about that because we now have 2 student firefighters on per shift. So when we have volunteers that want to stay the night, we're really pushing what we have the ability to do other than sending people up there. And so we're actually looking at that we may send one of our career firefighters as an acting lieutenant up there with a student to staff that station more often,
Okay.
just to accommodate the people on this end.
Yeah,
And that's actually a really good option. But again, it's, it's just using what we have, we're there.
and there's where another threat is. If we don't have the facilities to sleep these people, are we gonna lose potential volunteers in the future because they're not being able to pull shifts?
That's my worry right now.
Yeah, and I feel that too.
The enthusiasm is there, but we're
Yeah,
just, we're-
if we start limiting what they can do, then that's when that might start changing all
I
that.
mean, as it is, just because we have a lot of people, I mean, we'll fill the dorms and we'll have people sleep in the chairs. I mean, they're, which isn't ideal, but
Yeah.
they're willing to do it. So we're
That's
we're-
back in the eighties.
a little bit of that goes on, which is
Table.
Yeah,
great, but it'd be really awesome if we could put them in a dorm, that's,
yeah.
and right now, the little house out here, we can use that, but we don't even have the speaker system hooked up for that. And then how do they get in and out of the building at night and all this kind of stuff? There's other logistical issues with that.
I feel that this is something that we have to figure a direction forward. I realize that we're probably not gonna be able to act, but at least figuring out some sort of direction as to where we're going.
Right.
Rather than trying to figure out the direction when we do have to be, try and stay proactive on it rather than be reactive.
We're not gonna solve it today, and
No,
that was never the
absolutely not.
intent,
No.
but to at least get the conversation going and start thinking about it. But what I don't want to do is just keep kicking the can down.
No,
Right,
we can't.
right.
Yeah.
And Chief, you brought up a good point that I wanted to bring up is mutual aid from that station. That'll probably, sounds like Sandy might merge in there. Sandy's helping man that right now. I
Sandy's paying
understand.
for one guy per shift.
Okay, years ago, when Boring had that station, they could never man it,
No.
and we was first in engine down there at Eagle Creek all the time, helping them out. So that's something we need to look at. If the mutual aid is good there, they could cover that part of the district.
The only problem that I have is that I feel that in the past, we've always relied too much on mutual aid. On a big fire or something like that, I agree in mutual aid. But if we have our citizens in our district to the north paying their taxes to us, we need to be providing that service to
So-
them.
And I differ
Well,
with you.
vice
We're
versa.
actually, the new data is showing that station isn't covering our district.
Right.
Okay.
We're actually still doing a very good job.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
agree with that, but I'm going on with what John said
Oh,
about
right.
mutual aid. In the past, I've always felt that we have relied too much on mutual aid.
Right now, it's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, we're covering our calls. We
Yes.
have mutual aid once in a while, which you'd expect, but not 12,
Yeah.
15 times a month. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing it.
So
Uh,
the point where Clackamas wanted us to help pay for that station,
They still do.
and we don't need to right now.
Nope,
There's no data that shows that we should be supporting that.
I never agreed with that.
If we were gonna help pay for that station, then we need to have our own
The substation.
capital to take care of. our citizens.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that Director Day said was that we need to consider moving quicker versus later. So maybe we should do a work session in July. Would that be too late, do you think? To maybe start coming up with some plans and have the chief get some data for us and so on?
If we're gonna look at imposing any kind of fees, we're gonna have to act a lot sooner than that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, July, they're gonna be,
They're gonna
The
be,
development study.
Yeah.
and if you drive around, they're developing hundreds of it.
And
So-
that'll even
so-
kick up more coming summer
Right.
months.
With-
We're gonna
Chief-
talk about it, I think we should do it.
I'm thinking next month. I mean, that's where I'm kind of at.
Are you able to get the data that we need to kind of dictate?
I can
to guide
get you,
us?
yeah, I can get you information based on what we have for this. So well, since we started.
Like
up.
response times,
Right.
distance, like how long does this station in 6 minutes, how far can it go? And then where would the next station best be located?
Yeah, I think it's important enough. We need to make it happen.
Okay.
Would we have a meeting?
Have that data to potentially assess a fee anyways? I mean,
No, we don't for
can we
that.
Set up a sub account in the LGIP and say, hey, we know we're gonna have it. Like, it's not a question of if, it's when.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That'd be a good idea, have a capital
If the-
fund and put it in LGIP and it be gaining interest.
Well, it It would all just stay in LGIP. If just on paper it would be a line item.
Yeah, it's a line item on our budget. We're putting everything there.
So would we have a meeting with the city and get the main developers here in a room?
Well, I think we should do the main developers. I mean, the city is already, like they said, they're more than willing
Well, I
to
think the
collect
city
any
should
fee
be
for us.
weighing in on the discussion about collecting the fees and all
If,
that.
if you have
you know.
specific questions and you can get them to me, I can have the city planner come back to our meeting and answer those questions.
So the one thing that sticks in my head on this is, you know, we have our city boundary right now, the Estacada city boundary, and we have our district boundary. Is there any data that the city can provide as to what they feel their future forecast is to where they're going with?
They do, they actually have that.
They have a
So it'd be
urban
nice
growth
to see,
boundary.
well, that's right, we have that
They're
map.
working on that housing needs analysis. right
Yes.
now, and I'm actually sitting on that committee, so, yeah, they're actively talking.
Yeah, the city has
So-
development they need to do and then wastewater treatment. And that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
what I'm worried about is we take the data that we have now for what's being built now, but yet we need to think 20 years down the road as to how much further that line is going to go. That comes from my Happy Valley days with how much further.
You
that
can only
line
go
is.
as far as Eagle Creek, and then it's District 1.
No, if the city annexes it in and
Yeah.
it's ours.
Yeah.
They
true.
could annex that
Very
area.
true.
I mean, if.
That would work for
I-
Brent Perry. She wants to get out of Clackamas and come into us.
Yeah,
How can I bring Eagle Creek in?
well, I think the biggest issue would be the actual creek, you know, we still got to keep in mind that sewage treatment plant, that is the big
Pipeline.
back on what the development's going to
The
be.
city's got to get that done. That could be. the
And they've
detriment
already
of the
got that in the
develop-
planning
Yeah.
phases, so.
Yeah,
That could squash development quicker than us collecting. a fee
So
if they
the
don't
city
build a big
did-
enough
originally
two-
didn't
two
plan
zone.
to develop anymore because their infrastructure wouldn't support it. They were told by the state, you have to support it. You can't not do it.
yeah.
You have to accommodate it, which means you need to expand your wastewater treatment plant, things like that. So that's where they're at. My first meeting with the mayor in June was just that, well, we don't want to expand, we're going to stay, and that has since changed.
I ran across the paper this week from 08 or 09, talking about the waste treatment plant and how the ammonia, what they were discharging was too high and they had to do something. Well, there's been a lot of development go on since then, so I'm wondering exactly what they did to take care of that. So,
Everybody want to look, because we're getting close to wrapping it up, February for another work session specifically and only on future development and assessment for buildings going in. So we got the board meeting on the 17th of February.
My week is 7th through the 11th is open right now.
I'm out of town until, I mean, I can still do a Zoom meeting. It doesn't really matter, but I'm not back until probably around the 16th or 17th.
Are we good with an evening or do we need to do a Saturday?
Weekends in February, if we could do it in the evening, like a board meeting,
Yeah.
I would prefer that.
I got the 16th and 18th open.
Do you want to do a work session on the board at the board meeting? Or do you do it separately?
No, I would think separately.
You do them separately, but you like, the school district does it a lot. They'll do it
Yeah.
about an hour before the board meeting,
Okay.
or 2
What
hours
about
before the
what
meeting,
about the
or whatever
24th?
works.
What about the 24th of February? Is that getting out there too far? I'm being selfish because I'm out of town until right at the board meeting.
Fine with the
I'm
24th.
open the 22nd.
Does that work
3rd, and
for
4th.
you, Director Day?
Yeah.
So why don't we do it in the evening? Why don't we make it, instead of making it at 7 o'clock, why don't we make it at 6 o'clock?
Yeah,
so if we were to imply a fee to new construction, it would not just apply to what's in the city, it would apply to the whole district, correct? So if anybody built a house in George or
Well, we'd have to
Dodge,
go to Clackamas and see that they're willing to.
so there's another
Collect
way
the
we
fee.
have to look at that too.
Yeah, well, it would be unfair to only charge one.
But in all reality, this is the big driver that's putting us in a position that we're in,
True.
is city growth.
Yeah, I would think you would just do it across the board and not limit it to city growth.
Yeah, well, it's just something that pops. in
So,
my head.
and that's something to talk about. So Chief, could you get some interaction with the city and talk to them about us and our future needs and that we're gonna set up a work session on the 24th.
Yeah, I think we're due for a meeting anyway, so.
Okay. So
Now, do you have to be outside the district to collect a fee, you gotta go to Clackamas County.
Yes,
Go through
true.
the county.
And we can talk about that, and maybe the chief can look in that,
Look into
call
that
Clackamas
direction.
County and ask them if it's possible. And like Director Miller says, the rural area isn't driving this need.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could somewhat justify if it's gonna be too problematic and it can't happen through Clackamas County, you could somehow justify that the rural area is not growing anymore. I
Well,
mean,
like-
and if it is, it's because a pole barn's going up or an ADU or a grandmother's, you know, a hardship.
Like in my area.
Huh?
Most of them are replacement dwellings.
Yes.
Yeah, like in my area, I mean, it's now, you have to have 100 acres to build a place. There is ways to get around it, but for the most part, that's what it is. You can't, like my farm, I can't subdivide my farm. So,
Well,
Yeah.
if a new structure's going in outside the city, it's gonna be usually bigger than the city lot.
Well,
It's
and
gonna
like
be a
direct-
Bigger dollar amount.
Well, like Director Day says, it's replacement, just like I'm on 5 acres. I paid for a permit that's called a replacement, meaning the double wide I'm in right now has to go away.
Mhm.
You know, and then if I want to build an ADU, because I'm in the urban growth boundary, I have to pull a full building permit.
Yeah.
So
Now, you're not within the city, but
the urban growth boundary allows me by state statute, they have to allow me,
all your permitting would go through the county.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the ADU,
is allowed.
yeah, it would be part of this.
No,
No, no,
It just depends on how you, I think, how you word it and how you do the resolution for it.
but in a sense, you know, I would be probably writing a check to you.
Well, us outside of the. Can't do it.
Right.
I mean, we're really pretty strict on all we can do. If you do build a pole barn, they're not increase their tax anyways.
Okay. So I think
February 24th, 6
Yep.
p.m.
info on what it would take to impose a fee and
Okay.
what we would need legislatively, whether the city would have to be part of it, or we would have to do a resolution and the city would just collect it.
But yeah, we'd have to do resolution, I know that.
Right.
And then the city, we just let them know, give them that information, they would be able to collect.
And
based
then
on
maybe talk to the builders, if you could reach out to them and talk to them about what this impact is doing to our fire district and about how limited we are on space and so on, and that we would be doing this to help support the future need of the district.
what are we gonna base that fee on?
Well, that we'll get to that with them, maybe and us and talking.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it square footage like Director Day said? I mean,
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
A subset that,
I'm going the other side. The cost of our needs based on the fee that we would impose, not the cost onto the builder. It's just what we're gonna base our financial needs on. I mean, that's gonna be a question I'm sure that's gonna be asked, is what are you planning on imposing? And how are we gonna justify what we oppose? Or impose, I should say.
and is the fee charged? I mean, because there's your developer.
Yep.
And usually developer sells to a builder.
Yep.
There's a builder, and then there's the end person purchasing.
So you're thinking two and three-step distributions?
Who, no, who does that fee get charged to? Because, you know, we might be talking to a developer now who's not even gonna pay the fee.
Yeah.
Who's gonna sell the ground to a home builder, who's gonna sell the ground for that home to a homeowner.
I think what you would have is the developer that goes in, that does
would
all
be
the
the
site
one,
prep.
yeah,
That they would be paid from that side of it, and then that cost would be passed down to each of the developers that buy lots and that.
so
Development.
when they sell a lot for 130,000, it goes up to 135,
Yeah,
whatever
Yeah,
that
yeah,
number is.
yeah.
And maybe we do it under square footage, you know, like so much,
I don't know the rules.
I mean,
Yeah, we gotta see what they
So it'd
are.
be land, square footage of land rather than a
Right.
building. Because we don't know when they're gonna build a building, but they know they're gonna split the land up first, you know.
And it's good that we explore it further. For
Mhm.
sure.
cool. Chief, do you have enough direction?
Yeah, I may need to follow up afterwards or something, but.
Okay.
Or as we get closer.
Okay. Wait for Director McAdoo to come back.
was talking to somebody who did build on the highway. And this is coming from years ago. They talked about building a new station on the highway.
We did, yeah. That was the first time we went through.
And somebody was saying that if we did build on the highway, that we would have to put a light in, that we would be responsible for the cost.
Fire signal.
Yep.
You're talking about the one,
Might be something we think about.
Yeah.
because
that's there too.
we had went out for a vote on one on
It was the
River
first
Mill
one,
Road down
yeah.
on Veterans Way. From what I understand, that whole big commercial corner that the Thriftway guy owns, right on River Mill and 224.
Yeah.
If that gets developed, then the signal has to go in.
Well,
That's what I was told years ago. I was on the traffic
Campus-
impact study years ago.
and starting next month, campus is gonna go, I did that extension 2 years ago through my property. Now Al's doing through his, so it's actually, there's gonna be another way out of the industrial park via River Mill now. Starting there pretty soon.
Cool.
So,
Someday you're gonna see a signal at River Mill.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's coming.
Well, and you, that's the other thing too, is you look at all the housing development and everything going in up there. There is no signals on 224, any of that for all those people coming out of there to get down on the highway.
Mhm.
And that adds liability to us. I mean, potential car accidents go up more and more.
That'll
Because there is no
increase.
signal.
Mhm.
Well, they're gonna tie in Campanella too.
Yep.
To Hill, yeah,
Hillway.
Hillway.
We're gonna be coming out.
All I know is 23 years ago, driving to Portland to go to work as a firefighter compared to today driving in, it's a world of difference.
So when I moved out here in 05, we looked at Canby, we looked at all these different other places. This was the fastest commute time
Yeah.
to get to town.
Yeah,
It's amazed how it's changed. When I built my first building, getting out of the industrial park was no problem with the dump truck. And now you have to just sit there and wait and wait. and
oh,
wait.
yeah.
You
totally.
come from Boring down Anziger
Yep.
at anytime after about 4 PM.
That's where
You're
they need a
behind
light.
15
They
cars.
definitely need a light
Yeah.
or whatever.
They've talked about it because they've had quite a few
Oh,
fatalities
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things, and everybody weigh in, is I think that these work sessions are pretty good because we all have different opinions and sometimes us talking it through, kind of we learn from each other and it's a healthy discussion. And so I feel being on the board for a while, we haven't done as many work sessions to help guide us in the past. And so I just really appreciate people making time. Yeah, I know it's an impact in families and whatnot, but I feel that this has a lot of value. So
Oh, yeah.
I just,
Healthy discussion.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, I desperately needed it from my standpoint. Just did nothing else, just to get an idea of what this group's thinking.
For me, it's looking at threats in the future, and I definitely feel that this is a potential threat that we need to get out in front of,
Mhm.
and the sooner the better. And for me, it's just figuring out funding to begin with. You know, the other answers will come in time. You can't start fundraising in 2 years for a problem that you have to solve in 5, you know, so we need to get out in front of it and figure out how we're gonna pay for it and keep that threat away.
Copy that.
Before we hit our time here, the only other thing that I had on here was something to budget for this next year is a strategic plan. As we are way outdated on our current one, which is not so applicable anymore.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm
Been a
gonna be
long
looking
time.
at for this
Been a long
next,
time.
the next fiscal year.
Did Bob ever do one or was it?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, he did one.
I know Larry Long did one. years ago.
No, we did one.
Bob-
We did
Bob-
it every 5 years,
Okay.
Yeah,
every 3 to 5.
I might have it in the files there somewhere.
Yeah, it's around, I want to say it's 14 or 15, somewhere in there.
It sounds about right. Yeah.
Well,
What month are you thinking about working on the strategic plan?
Like I said, be the next fiscal year, so just haven't gotten that far.
so I want to say something real quick. We're 6 months old now.
Yep.
And I'm pleased as punch.
You know, I
As
agree with
where we were at years ago, watching this fire district for many years. And things happen for a reason. And I think we've done a great job. We've got great chiefs working our new fire district, people we don't even know, didn't know a year ago. You know,
Alan was looking behind his shoulder like, who's he talking about?
you know, and from being here 28 years almost, I think we've done well. We've done well with this whole startup and hiring the right people and having all the good discussions to get there in the transition committee and all that.
Well, it's just a reminder, right? We've somehow ended up with some really, really good people, and it's important to invest in our people.
You bet.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So thank everybody. for all our hard work.
anything additional, directors?
Mhm.
Okay. With that being said, last call, any additional comments? Okay.
Sorry.